Record. Perfect. So, John, just the first question. What are your memories of VE Day?
I've got very clear memories of VE Day. I was at school at Ashby Grammar School. All the swimming baths had been closed throughout the war. And then it was suddenly announced that the following day we were going to go to the swimming baths at Colville.
Right.
Got on a rickety old bus and we were taken to Colville. And on the way over, the teacher said, I think there's going to be an announcement tonight that the war's going to end. So we all got a bit excited and we got in the swimming pool. And I was very proud because my sister had knitted me a swimming costume.
Right.
And that was brilliant. I was very proud because you couldn't buy such things in the war.
Yeah.
Until I got in the bath. And when I got in the swimming bath with it, and remember this was the first time ever in my life in a bath, the crotch of the swimming costume was on the bottom of the bath as I stood up.
All right.
When I tried to get us, we were instructed to leap on our stomachs and swim, which was the strength of the swimming instruction of the day. This thing hung down like a keel beneath a boat. And the weight on it was amazing. So I made absolutely no headway at all. So my first swimming lesson was on actually VE Day. And then we came home in the evening. It was announced the Prime Minister was going to speak at 8 p.m. And so we crowded round the old radio. There were no televisions or anything in those days. Crowded round the radio, switched it on, and I was brought up in a pub. And so all the customers who were in the pub celebrating, they all crowded round the radio to hear the Prime Minister say that the following day was going to be a bank holiday and the war in Europe was over, but the war in Japan was continuing.
Right. And in terms of the war, to the isolation that you had, how similar or different is the isolation that we're experiencing at the moment?
Well, the isolation now isn't as exciting as it was in the war, because you used to get woken up in the night by the air raid sirens, and you'd have to get up and go to the air raid shelter, which in my case was the cellar of the pub. And down there you'd be joined by various neighbours from round about. I had been given a rubber lilo to go to sleep on, and I couldn't sleep for the ghastly rubber smell of the thing. And the mixture of the smell of the rubber lilo and the beer in the barrels in the cellar was really not very conducive to anything.
No.
And life used to get interrupted by excitement. I remember one day we had a pigsty and kept 2 pigs to kill for food, and the pigs caught measles.
Right.
And so my father sent me to the vets to get some measles medicine for the pigs, which I did. And my mother, my father, and myself were in the pigsty with the pigs, administering the medicine to them. And suddenly my father shouted, "Get down!" And there was a sound of an aircraft coming overhead.
Oh, wow.
And he pushed me into the straw, and my mother, and a bucket of pig food, and all the pig's muck was already in the straw. So when we stood up after the aircraft had gone overhead, which was in fact an enemy aircraft, subsequently crashed at Donisthorpe, we weren't really worth looking at, covered in pig food and pig droppings and straw and the medicine, the measles medicine, which smelt foul. So there were exciting days. These days are very flat compared with the war.
Going back to the first question, when you heard that the war was over in Europe, what were some of the first things you did the day after or the week after, and how did you feel about it?
Well, I'd known nothing but wartime conditions, you see.
Yeah.
So I'd had nightmares of being chased by Hitler and all sorts of things, like all sorts of people had. And when it was all over, there wasn't a lot you could do because food was still rationed. there were no such things as chocolates or bananas or oranges or anything like that. So in order to celebrate the VE Day, the major celebrations took place 3 or 4 weeks later, when everybody had time to pool their rations and make enough sandwiches and cakes to have a street party. And I remember we had the party for the customers in the pub, which was in the street outside the pub. And the first thing we did was burn all the blackout blinds, because the windows had to be blacked out with wooden screens covered in felt. And so they put all the blackout screens were put into the street and set on fire. The council weren't over impressed that we'd set fire to the street, but everybody, I know a local chap turned up with a loudspeaker and a gramophone turntable, and so he played dancing music, not the dances you know today. There were things like the Velita and the slow waltz and the quick waltz were done on the tarmac of the road to this cranky old megaphone thing. And of course, clothes were rationed, so you couldn't get any decent clothes. It was a huge relief that it was over, because customers of the pub that had been called up were being killed. One of them, I remember, was incarcerated in a Japanese prisoner of war camp, and you knew about all these things, and you felt glad that it was all going to be over. But and there was no football, there was no sports.
No.
Very much anyway. I first went to Derby County in about 1943, I think, when they played Leicester City. But the teams were made up of players who were serving in the armed forces nearby. And Derby County then had the formation of their subsequent cup winning team, with Doherty and Carter and people like that, who were all actually serving in the Royal Air Force, but were PT instructors at Loughborough University. They all ended up playing for Derby County.
Brilliant. That's it, John, from me. I think they're going to put this on social media and celebrate, obviously, for tomorrow. So appreciate you obviously answering the questions.
I'm very more than happy to talk to you about it. I've got a clear memory of it. I was 11 years old at the time, so it was a significant part of my life. And I can remember the bombings and the fighters and all the seeing a damage. One of the things probably kindled my interest in joining the Royal Air Force was to see a shot up Wellington bomber going overhead, twin-engined aircraft with one engine hanging off on the underside of the wing.
Oh well. I bet you've got some other stories as well, haven't you, John?
Yeah, given enough time, I could go on forever, I suppose. But
we'll have to do a proper interview with you, and we'll have to ask some more questions to you.
I mean, few people will remember that a lot of aircraft were sent over from America. Under what was called lease lend. It was like the government hire purchased a lot of aeroplanes from America, and they were all delivered by road in boxes to RAF Litchfield at Fradley, and they were all assembled and test flown out of there. And one bloke got it wrong, and he came in after a test flight and knocked the roof off the pub that was at the side of the road in Fradley. All sorts of colourful things. I remember my father being in the Home Guard, and it really was like Dad's army.
Oh, was it?
They had a sort of dinner in my parents' pub, one for Christmas, and they had a local catering firm come and do it. I don't know quite how in rationing they did it, but they certainly did. And the guy couldn't understand why all the beef was coming back on the plates, and he said, "I can't understand why nobody's eating the beef." And nobody sort of answered him. Then he sent out the Christmas pudding, and that was coming back, and people were getting quite restless. It was only then that he realised he'd sent out the beef with rum sauce and the,
Oh dear.
and the Christmas pudding with horseradish.